It all started, as I assume most neighborhood-level declarations of war do, with a piece of paper. It wasn't just any paper. It was a single sheet of 24-pound premium stock card in a color I can only describe as depressing beige. It was the official color of the Tranquility Estates Homeowners Association, a shade so devoid of joy it could make a golden retriever depressed. I was standing on my porch on a Tuesday, a perfect, sunny, unassuming Tuesday, holding this beige offense in my hand. My name is Mark, and I'm what you'd call HOA fatigued. I bought this house in Tranquility Estates 3 years ago because the schools were good and the commute was short. Nobody told me I was also signing a non-aggression pact with a shadow government run by a woman whose only joy in life was the laminated violation flowchart she kept in her golf cart. Her name is Brenda. Brenda, our HOA president, is a woman who believes curb appeal is one of the 10 commandments, right between "thou shalt not covet" and "thou shalt not have a satellite dish visible from the street." She's a one-woman enforcement agency, gliding silently through the neighborhood in her electric golf cart, which she'd had painted to match the HOA-approved taupe trim on her house, handing out fines with the grim satisfaction of a medieval inquisitor. I unfolded the beige paper. I already knew what it was. I could smell the self-righteousness. Tranquility Estates. Homeowners Association, where harmony is maintained. Official Notice of Violation. Date: November 4th, 2025, to Mark Davis, 1-23 Maple Drive. Violation: CCNR, Article 4, Section 2B, Exterior Illumination Standards. Description: a routine inspection on the evening of November 3rd revealed a non-compliant exterior illumination fixture. The bulb, 1, installed in the primary porch sconce at 123 Maple Drive, exhibits a daylight color temperature, approx. 5,000 K, 6,000 K. Per the CCNRs, all exterior bulbs visible from the street must be soft, warm white, not to exceed 2,700 K, to maintain the neighborhood's harmonious and welcoming nocturnal ambience. Action required: cure the violation, replace the bulb, within 7 days. Fine: a $2,500 fine has been assessed to your account. Subsequent fines: failure to cure will result in a $50 fine per day. Sincerely, Brenda Wilcox, President, HOA Board. I read it twice. Harmonious and welcoming nocturnal ambiance. She had fined me for a light bulb. It was a 60-watt equivalent LED bulb. I bought it on Amazon. I'd installed it precisely because my porch step is slightly warped, and I was tired of playing guess where the Amazon package is with my shins every night. It was a practical, safety-oriented decision. To Brenda, it was a crime against humanity, a daylight bulb in a soft white world. I looked up at the offending fixture. It was off, obviously. The sun was shining, but I could feel its 5,000 K rated insolence. I crushed the beige letter in my fist. This wasn't just a fine. This was a challenge. The worst part? This wasn't a surprise. I knew this was coming. The letter was just the official documentation of last night's incident. It was 9:00 p.m. I was dragging my recycling bin to the curb for pickup, wearing my beloved, faded Star Wars pajama pants and a pair of mismatched socks. I heard a sound that always sets my teeth on edge, the high-pitched electric whine of a golf cart engine that sounds like a dying weasel. Brenda glided to a stop on the sidewalk, her headlights pinning me like a startled deer. "Mark?" Her voice cut through the quiet night air. "Brenda." I nodded, trying to look casual while holding a broken-down Cheerios cereal box. She didn't say anything for a moment. She just sat there, perched on her vinyl seat, squinting up at my porch. Her head tilted, as if she were listening for a frequency only she and bats could hear. "Your light," she finally said. "My porch," I countered. "It's very crisp." "Crisp?" I repeated. "It's a light bulb, Brenda. It illuminates. That's its one job. It's doing its job." "It's aggressive," she shot back. "It's casting a light shadow on Mr. Henderson's prize-winning hydrangeas next door. They're confused. They think it's noon. He told me they're having trouble settling for the evening." I had to physically restrain myself from asking if Mr. Henderson's hydrangeas also enjoyed long walks on the beach. "They're plants, Brenda. I don't think they own watches." "It's giving the entire street a clinical feel," she pressed on, ignoring me. "Like a dentist's office, or a 24-hour convenience store. We are Tranquility Estates, Mark. We are not a 7-Eleven. The bylaws are very clear." "I'm not selling Slurpees, Brenda. I'm just trying not to break my ankle." Just check the bylaws," she said, her voice dripping with fake patience. "Article 4, Section 2B. We require 2700 K. Warm, welcoming. That bulb is hostile." I sighed, a deep, soul-cleansing sigh. It was pointless. "Got it. A welcome bulb. I'll look into it." "See that you do?" She nodded, satisfied. She put the golf cart in gear, but paused. "Oh, and Mark?" "Yeah?" "Your recycling bin is 3 inches too close to the curb. Please adjust it. We don't want to impede the street sweeper." "We don't have a street sweeper." She whined away into the darkness, leaving me in the hostile, clinical 5000 K glow of my porch light. And now, here I was, back in the present, holding the $25 invoice for my hostility. The fine wasn't the point. It was the principle. It was the audacity. Confused hydrangeas. I pulled out my phone and dialed my best friend. Dave lives 2 towns over, in a normal neighborhood. A neighborhood where you can have a crisp porch light, a basketball hoop, and maybe even a wind chime, all without being summoned to a tribunal. He lives in what Brenda would call the wilderness. He picked up on the 3rd ring. "What's up? You're not still trying to fix your garbage disposal with a YouTube video, are you?" "Worse," I said. "I've been beige-mailed." "Oh no. What did you do? Did she finally get you for the slightly too green grass?" "My porch light." "Your porch light?" "It's aggressive. Too crisp. 5000 K. She wants 2700 K. She says it's confusing Mr. Henderson's hydrangeas." There was a long pause on the other end, then a snort, then a full-blown laugh. "You're kidding me. Confused hydrangeas? That's a new one, even for her." "She fined me $25, Dave." "So, just buy the 2700 K bulb," Dave said, ever the voice of reason. "It's $5, man. Don't poke the bear. You know what she's like." "No," I said, staring at the crumpled beige letter. "No, I'm done being reasonable. Poking the bear is exactly what I'm going to do. The bear needs to be poked, with a very large, very illuminated stick." "Mark, what are you talking about? Don't be an idiot. Just swap the bulb." "She wants a welcoming light. She wants a light that is compliant. I am going to give her the most compliant, most welcoming, most everything light she has ever seen. She wants to quote the bylaws. I'm going to become the bylaws." You're mixing metaphors, and you're starting to sound crazy. Just go to Home Depot. Too late, Dave. The line has been crossed. War has been declared. I hung up, my heart pounding with a righteous fury. I usually only reserved for people who merge without signaling. I went inside and sat down at my computer. The $25 fine notification was already in my email inbox. I crumpled the physical letter into a tight ball and threw it in the trash. This wasn't about a bulb anymore. This was about freedom. This was about the right to see my own porch. And okay, maybe, just a little bit, it was about spite. I opened a new browser tab. My fingers flew across the keyboard. Googled, brightest legal outdoor light. Googled, how many lumens to annoy neighbor. Googled, stadium lighting for residential use. Googled, HOA compliant floodlight loophole. I spent the next 4 hours in a caffeine and pettiness-fueled legal haze. I downloaded the 150-page PDF of the Tranquility Estates Covenants, Conditions and Restrictions, CC&Rs. It was a masterpiece of bureaucratic nonsense. I learned that I couldn't have a fence over 6 feet tall, Section 7A. My mailbox had to be a board-approved model, Section 5C, and I was limited to a maximum of one garden gnome of no more than 18 inches in height. Section 11F, lawn ornaments and miscellany. I waded through the beige-colored text, my eyes burning. Finally, I found it. Article 4, Section 2B. All exterior illumination fixtures of a standard residential nature, including, but not limited to, porch sconces, garage-mounted lights, and landscape uplighting, must utilize bulbs of a soft, warm white, not to exceed 2700 K temperature, to maintain a harmonious and welcoming nocturnal ambiance. I read it again. And again. And a third time, just to be sure. Of a standard residential nature. What, I wondered, was a non-standard fixture? The document was silent. It had entire subsections on flagpoles, max 20 feet, 1 flag, U.S. only, unless it's a seasonal but non-denominational banner, but nothing on non-standard lights. My heart was hammering. This was it. This was the crack in the beige facade. She had fined me for the bulb in my standard residential fixture. But if I installed something different? I kept digging. There had to be a catch, and then I found it, buried in Article 9, Safety and Compliance. All exterior installations of any kind, including structural, electrical, or decorative, must adhere to all applicable local, state, and federal safety guidelines and codes to ensure they do not pose a hazard to residents or the general public. Federal safety guidelines. Brenda's mistake was in thinking too small. She was worried about 2700 K. I was thinking bigger. I was thinking federal. What, I asked the blinking cursor, was a light that was federally regulated? My fingers tapped. Googled, FAA-approved lighting for home. The results were interesting. Strobe lights for tall towers, warning lights for chimneys. And then I saw it. I clicked a link, then another, landing on a government surplus auction website. The page loaded. My jaw went slack. There it was, in all its olive-drab industrial glory, a decommissioned L801A rotating airport beacon. The specs were hypnotic. Dual-beam, split-color configuration, 300-watt high-intensity discharge lamps, 100,000 candela, alternating green and white, 6 RPM, weatherproof, built for 24/7 operation at civilian airfields. It wasn't a light bulb. It was a statement. It was a 200-pound, 3-foot-tall, federally approved middle finger. And crucially, it wasn't a standard residential fixture. It was an airport fixture. And it was 100% compliant with all FAA federal guidelines. I looked at the buy it now price. It was substantial. I looked at the $25 fine notification on my other screen. This was no longer about money. This was about sending a message. I stared at the Buy It Now button for a solid 10 minutes. Is this insane? I said aloud to my empty living room. Yes, undeniably. Is this a gross overreaction to a $25 fine? Yes. Is this legal? I checked the site. It was surplus, completely legal to own. Does Brenda deserve it? Absolutely. My mouse hovered. I thought about the confused hydrangeas. I thought about the 3-inch recycling bin rule. I thought about the beige-colored golf cart. I clicked. A "Thank you for your purchase" screen popped up. My credit card whimpered. The shipping cost alone was more than my monthly mortgage payment. It was being shipped via freight. I felt a giddy, terrifying rush, the kind you get right after you've done something incredibly stupid and wonderful. I immediately called Dave back. Okay, don't be mad, I started. Mark, whatever you're about to say, just don't. Go to Home Depot. Buy the $5 bulb. Apologize to the hydrangeas. Don't make this worse. I can't do that, Dave, because I already bought the other bulb. What other bulb? A 3000K bulb? Are you trying to start a war over 300 kelvins? Sort of. Hey, you free next weekend? I need help with, let's call it a flagpole installation. A flagpole? Dave sounded confused. I thought this was about a light bulb. It is. It's a patriotic light bulb. That sits on a pole and rotates. A long, heavy, disappointed silence filled the line. Mark, what did you buy? Let's just say, I said, leaning back in my chair, a grin splitting my face. If any 747s get lost over our neighborhood, I've got them covered. And I'm pretty sure it's not soft, warm white. Dave groaned. You are the dumbest smart person I have ever known. I'll bring the drill. And beer. You're going to need so much beer. A week later, all hell arrived on a flatbed truck. I'd gotten the email. Your item, 1, is out for delivery, due to the item's weight, 210 tons, and dimensions, crate 8x4. Please ensure curb access is clear. At 2:00 p.m., my entire street vibrated. A massive 18-wheeler rumbled down Maple Drive, its air brakes hissing. It pulled to a stop in front of my house, blocking all traffic, which in Tranquility Estates consists of 2 minivans and Brenda's cart. The driver, a mountain of a man named Gus, hopped down. He had a glorious beard and a clipboard. He looked at my modest, beige-adjacent 2,000-square-foot house. He looked at his clipboard. He looked back at the house. You, 123 Maple Drive? He boomed. That's me, I said, trying to sound nonchalant, as if I had giant military-grade crates delivered every day. Gus grunted. He jabbed a thick thumb toward the 8-foot-long wooden crate on his truck. You, building a lighthouse? On the, driveway? Just a porch light, I said, my voice cracking slightly. The old one was non-compliant with the HOA. Gus stared at me. His expression didn't change, but I saw something in his eyes. A flicker of respect? He was a man who hauled strange things across the country. He had seen it all. But I got the distinct impression that porch light was a new one for this particular item. He just shook his head. "All right, man. You do you." He operated the forklift on the back of his truck with surprising delicacy, lifting the massive crate and setting it down on my driveway, right between my wife's sedan and my prize-winning and perfectly regulation rose bushes. It took up the whole bay. "Sign here." He handed me the clipboard. Don't blind the pilots." "I'll try my best, Gus." "Thanks." He climbed back into his rig, gave a blast of his air horn that I'm sure gave Mr. Henderson a heart attack, and rumbled away. I was left alone on my driveway with a crate that looked like it contained the Ark of the Covenant. My next-door neighbor, Tim, was staring, wide-eyed, over the hedge. He just mouthed, "What?" I gave him a crisp, non-committal wave. And then I saw it. The wine. Brenda's golf cart was at the end of the street. She'd clearly been summoned by the sound of the semi. She glided down the block, her eyes fixed on the crate. She slowed to a near stop, her face a mask of suspicion and confusion. The crate was just a crate. It wasn't violating anything, yet. She glared. It was a high-powered, industrial-strength glare. I gave her my warmest, most welcoming 100-watt smile. She narrowed her eyes and zipped away, no doubt to consult her flow chart. I patted the wooden crate. "Welcome home, buddy." I'm a pretty handy guy. I can fix a running toilet. I can assemble IKEA furniture without having a complete mental breakdown. I was, however, not qualified to install a 200-pound airport beacon on a 12-foot steel pole, wire it to a 240-volt line, and anchor it in a metric ton of concrete. This was not a DIY job. This was a call-a-professional job. A very specific professional. My first call was to Johnson & Sons Electrical, the company that had put in my ceiling fans. "Hi," I said. "I have a non-standard lighting project. I need a 240-volt line run to my front yard, a 12-foot pole installed, and a fixture mounted." Sure, the receptionist said. "Like a big security floodlight?" "Sort of," I said. "It's an L801A. "A what now?" "An L801A. It's a rotating airport beacon." There was a click. She had hung up on me. My second call was to Brightway Electricians. "Brightway, this is Gary." I gave him the same speech. Gary, at least, didn't hang up. He just laughed. He laughed for a solid 30 seconds. "An airport beacon? In your front yard? What, are you trying to land a Cessna on your roof? Ha! That's a new one." "No, we don't do that. Good luck, pal." Click. My third call was to a number I found on a flyer stapled to a telephone pole at the gas station. It was just a name and a number, scribbled in marker. "Sully's Electrical and Welding. We do the weird stuff." A gravelly voice answered. "Sully." "Hi, Sully. My name is Mark. I have a weird stuff job for you." "Yeah? How weird we talking? You try to rewire your house to your car battery again?" "No. I need to install a 200-pound FAA-approved L801A rotating airport beacon in my front yard to win a fight with my HOA." There was a long, appreciative pause. "Kid," Sully said, his voice full of newfound warmth. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. Don't touch nothing." Sully did not look like a licensed electrician. He looked like a roadie for a 1980s metal band who had been living in the woods for 20 years. He rolled up in a rusted-out blue van with a custom shocking airbrushed on the side. He was all leathery tan, with a greasy ponytail, a missing front tooth, and a can-do attitude that seemed slightly, wonderfully unhinged. He got out of his van, looked at the crate on my driveway, and let out a low whistle. "Well, hot damn," he said, pulling a crowbar from his back pocket. "Mind if I be my guest?" With 3 violent thwacks, he popped the lid off the crate. We both peered inside. There it was, nestled in foam, all green and clear glass and heavy-duty metal. It was beautiful. "Well, look at that," Sully said, a huge, gap-toothed grin spreading across his face. "It's a genuine L801A. Haven't seen one of these beauties since I was wiring a landing strip in, let's just call it Guatemala. What's the story here, kid? You running drugs?" "Worse," I said. "HOA." Sully's grin vanished, replaced by a look of profound, almost religious seriousness. He put a greasy hand on my shoulder. "Say no more." "My porch light," I explained, "was too crisp. 5,000 K. "The monsters," Sully breathed, his eyes wide. "They want warm and welcoming. 2,700 K. Sully looked from me to the beacon and back. The dangerous smile returned. "HOA, you say?" "Oh, I love HOA jobs. They said this one was too crisp. Aggressive, even." "Right. Well, this'll be welcoming, all right. Welcoming to any aircraft in a 50-mile radius. Okay, kid, here's the plan. We're not just gonna stick this on a pole. We're gonna engineer this son of a bitch." For the next hour, Sully sketched on a legal pad, his enthusiasm growing with every line. "We're gonna need a 4-foot concrete footer, square yard, reinforced with rebar, or this thing'll topple in the first high wind. We'll trench a new 240 line direct from your breaker box. Heavy gauge. We don't want any fires. And the pole, we're not using some cheap aluminum. We're using 4-inch galvanized steel. This thing's gonna be hurricane-proof." "Sully, this sounds expensive." "It is," he said cheerfully. "But doing it right always is. And then, the switch." His eyes gleamed. "We'll put it in the garage. A big red industrial-grade emergency stop switch. The kind you have to slam. We'll label it the big fucking light." Can we just label it Patriot Light?" I asked. "The bylaws are weird about language." "Your house, your rules," Sully shrugged, clapping his hands together. "All right, I'll have my guys and the cement mixer here tomorrow, 8 a.m. sharp. This is gonna be fun." The next day, my house became a construction zone. Sully's team was a whirlwind of glorious, chaotic energy. A cement mixer churned on my lawn, leaving tire tracks that I knew Brenda was photographing from her window. They dug a hole in my front yard that looked suspiciously like a grave. My neighbors gathered on their lawns, whispering. "What's he building?" I heard Mrs. Peterson from 3 doors down ask. "I heard it's a 5G tower," Tim's wife whispered back, horrified. "For his computer." The 12-foot steel pole was set in the concrete, perfectly plumb. Sully and his team, a guy with a neck tattoo named Spider, and a kid who looked about 15, then wrestled the 200-pound beacon to the top and bolted it down. It looked profound. It was a monument. Around 3:00 p.m., just as they were trenching the cable across the lawn, the inevitable happened. The whine of the golf cart arrived. Brenda pulled up on the sidewalk, clipboard in hand. She looked furious. "Mark! Mark!" she shouted, marching onto my, now muddy, lawn. "What is this? This construction? I didn't approve any hardscaping. I didn't approve this pylon." I was wearing a hard hat Sully had given me. It felt appropriate. "Morning, Brenda. Beautiful day for a home improvement project, isn't it?" "What is that thing?" she shrieked, pointing at the beacon. "Oh, that?" I said. "That's my new light fixture. You know, the one you wanted? You said the old one wasn't good enough, so I'm upgrading." "That is not a light fixture. That is industrial junk." Sully chose this moment to amble over, wiping grease on his shirt. "Ma'am, excuse me, are you the HOA lady?" "I am the president of this board, yes." Sully's electrical. Now, I understand you had a problem with my client's patriotism?" Brenda was taken aback. "His what?" "This here," Sully said, patting the steel pole, "is a flagpole, and we're just installing the light that illuminates the flag. You know, so he can fly it 24/7. It's the flag code, federal law." Brenda's eyes narrowed. That is not a flagpole. It's too thick. And what's that thing on top?" "That, ma'am," Sully said, "is the Patriot Light. It's a commemorative, rotating, multi-spectrum beacon of freedom." Brenda was sputtering. She knew she was being played, but Sully's invocation of flag code and patriotism had clearly thrown her. It's hard to be against patriotism in a neighborhood where 14-foot inflatable bald eagles appear every 4th of July. This is not over, Mark," she fumed. "I am checking the bylaws. Article 7. I'm checking Article 7. "You do that, Brenda," I called after her. "Check 'em all." She stormed off, her golf cart leaving angry little divots in the sidewalk. Sully turned to me. "Article 7, kid. You better hope there's nothing in Article 7. "Article 7 is about fences, walls, and hedges," I said. Sully's gap-toothed grin was blinding. I love this job. By 5:00 p.m., they were done. The lawn was a mess. The concrete was setting, and in my garage, next to the light switch for the garage itself, was a new addition. A giant, red, mushroom-shaped button in a gray metal box, labeled in Sully's neatest print, Patriot Light. "All right," Sully said, packing up his tools. "It's dusk, the magic hour. You want to do the honors?" "Sully," I said, shaking his greasy hand. "It's been a privilege." "Just send me the video of her face," he cackled, climbing into his van. "And remember, that's a 240 line. Don't lick it." He roared off, leaving me alone with my creation. I waited. I waited until the sun dipped. Below the horizon, and the first of the HOA-approved 2700K warm lights began to flicker on. I was in the garage. My hand was hovering over the big red button. My heart was pounding. I had Dave on speakerphone, perched on my workbench. "Dude, are you sure about this?" Dave's voice was tinny and anxious. "My mom lives 3 blocks away. She just had eye surgery. She doesn't need this." "Tell her to close the blinds," I said, my voice trembling with giddy anticipation. "She'll probably be fine. Okay, here goes. For the hydrangeas." I took a deep breath, and I slammed my palm down on the Patriot Light button. Nothing happened. For about half a second. First, there was a low mechanical that seemed to vibrate in my teeth. It was the sound of a transformer waking up. Then, a heavy rotational whirr. Then, a solid industrial chunk-clunk as the motor engaged and the massive beacon began its first, fateful rotation. I sprinted out of the garage and onto my front lawn, and I was blinded. A beam of pure, solid, 100,000 candela white light was scything through the twilight. It was brighter than the sun. It was brighter than my future. It was so bright it felt solid. The beam swept across my lawn, turning the grass a sickly, radioactive white. It swept across Tim's house, illuminating his living room with the intensity of a police helicopter. I could see him and his wife, frozen, staring at their TV, which was now completely washed out. And then, chunk, clunk. The light switched. A beam of vivid emerald green light, just as intense, followed in its wake. My house, my yard, and the entire cul-de-sac were now being bathed in alternating, strobing flashes of brilliant white and eerie green, 6 rotations per minute. It was glorious. The whir, chunk, clunk was deafening. The light was astonishing. Mr. Henderson's prize-winning hydrangeas next door looked like they were at a high-budget rave in Ibiza. Every bug in a 3-mile radius was now converging on my front yard. I had to put on the sunglasses I kept in my shirt pocket. I stood there, on my lawn, arms folded, bathed in the alternating glow. I had done it. My phone, sitting on my lawn, immediately exploded. It was Dave. I picked it up. "Mark! Mark! Holy, I can see it!" he was screaming. I could barely hear him over the whir chunk of the beacon. "I'm not kidding! I'm 5 miles away! I'm on my porch and I can see the glow! It looks like a UFO is landing on your house! It's on the news!" "It's not on the news, Dave." "It should be! My mom's cat is freaking out! This is amazing!" Psst. A text came in. It was from Tim, my next-door neighbor. My cat just ran into the wall. What is happening? Psst. Another one. Mrs. Peterson. "Mark, is this a test?" My garage door is opening and closing by itself. Whoops. Okay, that was an unexpected side effect. The 300-watt discharge lamp was apparently interfering with garage door openers. And then I heard it. It started as a low rumble, but it quickly escalated. It was a sound that could curdle milk. It was a sound that could stop a charging rhino. It was a shriek of pure, unadulterated rage. "Mark!" I turned. There, on her front lawn, 2 houses down, stood Brenda. She was in her pink, fuzzy bathrobe. Her hair was in curlers. Her face, illuminated in strobe-like flashes of green and white, was a mask of apocalyptic fury. She was marching toward me, her little fuzzy slippers flapping uselessly on the pavement. "Mark!" she screamed, coming to a stop at the edge of my property line, just outside the blast radius of the light. "What is this? Shut it off now!" I cupped my hand to my ear, sunglasses still on. "What?" I shouted over the whir chunk clunk. "Can't hear you, Brenda. It's a bit breezy tonight." "It's not breezy. It's your monstrosity. It's pointed at my bedroom." "It's not pointed at anything, Brenda," I yelled back, feeling the power surge through me. "It rotates. It's a beacon. It's welcoming, just like you wanted." It's green. Green isn't a welcoming color." "It's white and green. It's FAA approved. Federal guidelines, Brenda." She was literally hopping up and down with rage. "I'm calling the police. I'm calling the FAA. I'm calling the governor. This is a public nuisance, a hazard." "Good luck," I bellowed. "I think they're a little busy." She pulled out her phone, her fingers jabbing at the screen as she was bathed in green, then white, then green. "You will rue this day, Mark. Rue it." It took them about 15 minutes. I'd gone inside to grab a beer and a lawn chair. I was now sitting in my front yard, sunglasses on, sipping a cold one, enjoying the rhythmic whir chunk and the rave-like atmosphere. A police cruiser pulled up, its own blue and red lights completely washed out and rendered pathetic by my beacon. 2 officers got out. One was older, with a face that had seen everything and a mustache that had seen the 1980s. This was Officer Miller. The other was a rookie, young, and clearly trying very, very hard not to laugh. This was Officer Gable. Brenda, who had been waiting in her bathrobe by the cruiser, immediately pounced. "Officers, thank goodness, arrest this man. He's a menace. He's blinding the entire neighborhood. He's violating." Officer Miller just sighed, a deep, heavy sigh that came from his very soul. He rubbed the bridge of his nose, his eyes squinted against the green-white, green-white. "Ma'am, please step back." He walked onto my lawn. Gable followed, his hand twitching near his notepad. "Sir," Miller began, his voice flat, I'm not even sure how to start. Please tell me what I am looking at." "Evening, officers," I said, taking a sip of my beer. "Nice night for it. This is just my new porch light. The old one was non-compliant with the HOA. Officer Gable coughed, a sound that sounded suspiciously like a laugh. "Sir," Miller said, "is that an airport runway beacon?" "Yes, officer. It's an L801A, I said, as if reciting a warranty. "Decommissioned, of course, from the surplus auction. It's 100% FAA approved for civilian airfield use." "Sir, this is not a civilian airfield. This is Maple Drive." "I know that, officer, but I checked the local ordinances. Chapter 14, Public Nuisance, and Chapter 18, Lighting and Signage. As long as it's not flashing red or blue, or impersonating an emergency vehicle, and as long as it's not aimed directly at traffic, it's just a bright light. On my property." "Sir," Miller said, his patience wearing thin as a green beam swept over his face. "It's aimed at everything. It's rotating. I think I just saw a bat catch on fire." I looked. The bat was fine, just very confused. "It's for safety, officer," I said gravely. "My HOA is very strict about following federal guidelines. Article 9, I'm just trying to be a good, compliant neighbor." Brenda shrieked. "He's mocking me, officer! He's mocking the bylaws!" Officer Miller turned his gaze to Brenda, who was vibrating in her fuzzy slippers. He looked at her. He looked at me, sitting in my lawn chair with my beer. He looked up at the sky-sweeping, whir-chunk-ing behemoth. "Ma'am," he said, "as unbelievably awful as this is, it's not illegal. It's on his property. The light is not a prohibited color. It's just awful. But it's not a criminal matter. This is a civil matter. You'll have to take it up with your HOA." This was the moment. The punchline. Brenda's face went white, then green, then white. "I am the HOA!" she screamed, her voice cracking. Officer Miller's mustache twitched. "Well," he said, "then I guess you have a meeting to schedule." He tipped his hat to me. "Sir, maybe aim it up? A little for the bats?" "It's a 360-degree beacon, officer," I said apologetically. "Up is sort of implied in the rotation." He just shook his head. "All right, we're done here. Gable, let's go." Gable was walking backward to the car, his phone out, clearly recording a video. "You got it, boss." They got in their cruiser and drove off, Miller looking exhausted, Gable laughing into his radio. Brenda was left on the sidewalk, sputtering, her face a mask of green and white fury. I gave her a little two-finger wave. She just pointed a trembling finger at me. "War, Mark. This is war." "I know, Brenda," I called back cheerfully. "See you at the next meeting." Brenda declared war, and her first move was to call an emergency board meeting at the community clubhouse. The summons was, of course, on beige paper, slid under everyone's door. Topic: 123 Maple Drive and the egregious nuisance fixture. The clubhouse was packed. It was standing room only. This wasn't your usual meeting with 3 bored retirees deciding on the new petunias of the month. This was a pay-per-view event. The entire neighborhood was there. The atmosphere was thick. Half the neighborhood was clearly furious. The other half was amused. I saw more than a few people hiding smiles behind their hands. Brenda stood at the flimsy podium, her hands gripping the sides. She looked like she hadn't slept. Her eyes were wild. This monstrosity, she began, her voice shaking with rage. This beacon is a clear violation of everything Tranquility Estates stands for. It's tacky. It's a nuisance. It's hostile. Hear, hear, shouted Mr. Henderson from the front row. My hydrangeas are ruined. They're overstimulated. They're trying to bloom in November. And my cat, yelled Tim's wife. He's got a concussion. He's been walking in circles for 2 days. My garage door keeps opening, shouted someone from the back. At 3 a.m. My wife thinks the house is haunted. Brenda pointed at the crowd. See? See? It's a menace. It's affecting property values. It's affecting our pets. And I have it on good authority, she lowered her voice conspiratorially, that it's confusing the migratory patterns of the Canadian goose. The room fell silent. This was new. Brenda, I said from my seat. The geese flew south 2 months ago. They might come back, she shrieked. Mark Davis, this board finds you in violation of Article 14, Public Nuisance. And we are fining you, added Gary, the board treasurer, a man who looked like a startled turtle. $1,000. The room gasped. And, Brenda continued, going for the kill, we are filing an immediate injunction to have the thing removed at your expense. The room was buzzing. This was it, the final showdown. Brenda was smiling, a thin, cruel smile. She thought she had me. Mark, she said, do you have anything to say for yourself? Before we vote? I did. I stood up. I was wearing my nicest polo, and I was carrying a binder, a very thick 3-ring binder. Sully had told me to bring the paperwork, and I had. I walked to the podium. Brenda reluctantly stepped aside. I opened the binder. Friends, neighbors, Brenda, board members, I began. My voice was calm. I'm a simple man, I said, looking out at the crowd. I like my lawn, I like my house, I just want to follow the rules. I held up the original, crumpled beige letter. I present Exhibit A, the $25 fine I received for my 60-watt, 5,000 K daylight bulb. A bulb that was, and I quote, aggressive, clinical, and confusing to hydrangeas. A few people chuckled. Mr. Henderson scowled. I tried to be a good neighbor, but I was fined. So I consulted the bylaws. The bylaws you wrote, Brenda. I flipped a few pages in my binder. I present Exhibit B, the HOA CCNRs, Article 4, Section 2B, which, as we all know, only applies to standard residential fixtures. My beacon, as I'm sure we can all agree, is not a standard fixture. It is an L801A. I pointed to Brenda. Brenda, at our last discussion, you screamed, and I quote, "This is a public nuisance, a hazard." You were worried about safety. And I agree, safety is paramount. I flipped again. Which brings me to Exhibit C, Article 9, Safety and Compliance, which demands that all installations adhere to local, state, and federal safety guidelines. I pulled out a thick, stapled document. This, my friends, is FAA Advisory Circular 150-5345-12F, the federal guidelines for airport beacons. My Patriot Light is 100% compliant with all federal guidelines for aviation safety. I've even, and this is the best part, I've registered its coordinates with several amateur pilot associations. They've updated their maps. They're calling our little cul-de-sac Beacon Hill. Silence. Utter, beautiful, stunned silence. "You can't fine me for nuisance, Brenda," I said, my voice low and clear, "because a nuisance is defined in Article 14 as something without redeeming purpose. My beacon has a purpose. It is providing a valuable navigational service to the private aviation community of this great state." I looked at Gary. "And you can't fine me $1,000 because Article 20, the fine schedule, explicitly caps non-compliance fines at $50 per day." Brenda's face had gone from beige to white to a very interesting shade of purple. And then a new voice spoke up. It was Mr. Henderson's son, a quiet guy who was also a corporate lawyer. The same guy Brenda had fined for having a non-standard basketball hoop. "He's right," the lawyer said, standing up. "He's 100% right. The bylaws are poorly written, Brenda. They're specific about standard fixtures, but silent on non-standard ones. You fined him for a 5,000K bulb. He removed it. This beacon is a different category entirely. You can't fine him for a nuisance that you can't legally define." He looked at me and nodded. "It's a textbook case. You wanted compliance. You got malicious compliance." The dam broke. The room started to clap. Not everyone, but enough. Tim was clapping. The lady whose garage door kept opening was clapping. The lawyer was definitely clapping. Brenda, defeated, banged the gavel. This meeting is adjourned!" The war was over. I had won. The board was forced to rescind the $1,000 fine. They are now in the process of a 6-month-long bylaw review, which involves paying the lawyer's son a lot of money to rewrite the entire 150-page document to specifically ban any and all aviation, maritime, stadium-grade, or otherwise non-residential in nature lighting fixtures exceeding 500 lumens. I had won, but I decided to be magnanimous. As a sign of good faith to the community, and to Mrs. Peterson's garage door and Tim's cat, I made a few adjustments. I had Sully come back for a case of beer and install a new timer. The Patriot Light now only runs from 8 o'clock p.m. to 10 o'clock p.m. A welcome window, if you will. He also, bless his heart, installed a smaller motor. The deafening whir-chunk-clunk is now a much more neighborhood-friendly whir-click. And so, a new normal has descended on Tranquility Estates. I'm on my porch, enjoying a cold beer. It's 8:01 p.m. Dave is over, sitting in the other lawn chair. Whir-click. The white beam sweeps over us. Whir-click. The green beam follows. "You know," Dave says, sipping his beer, his face washed in green, "it's actually kind of beautiful, in a War of the Worlds kind of way." "It's welcoming," I say, taking a sip. "Warm and welcoming." A U-Haul truck is parked down the street. A new family is moving in. The dad, a guy about my age, wanders over, shielding his eyes as the beacon makes its pass. "Hey," he says, squinting at me, then at the beacon, then back at me. "I'm Alex, just moving in." "Mark," I say, nodding. Cool. Quick question. Is the giant airport beacon optional? Or does the HOA, require that?" I look at the beacon, rotating faithfully against the night sky. I look at Dave, who is choking on his beer. I just smile and hand Alex a beer from the cooler. "Welcome to Tranquility Estates,"